Welcome to Tony McGee's Pro Football Plus. Now, we're pretending to be happy up here, but we're not real happy right now. So what do? You bring your crew back. I finally got Gary Clark to come up out of California and give us a little time. Donna Hopkins, she's going to work hard to get everything right. Milton, he said at your prayer in church yesterday. And Mike is running this whole show, but what you do, you go back and get a quarterback. One of the greatest ones in the history of the Washington team. The one that called you Shaft's daddy last year, Jason Campbell on the show. Come on back and check him out. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. And I tell you what, if you got a bad taste in your mouth, it wasn't for the food you got on the commercial. It's from the game you saw on Sunday. And I tell you, I'm not feeling good about this. I thought I see a lot of difference in this team. So let's start talking about this offense. We know we have a problem here. That's why we bought one of the best quarterbacks that we've had with Washington in. Because right now, I'm telling you, Donna, I like the young man, but Heinicke made too many mistakes on Sunday. And he didn't make the play. But first and foremost, why is this Washington team running so well? You got a running back that have 31 yards on 12 carries, a little bit under 3 yards a carry, and one catch for 73 yards, but then you don't run the ball after the first quarter. You put the onus on that young boy to try to get it done. Why do you do that? And what's wrong with the quarterback? Have they figured him out?
Well, Tony, you know what? If the defense hadn't given up so many points off the bat, he didn't have to be.
Whoa. Hey, this is not a defense segment. If you want to talk about the defense, don't come up with that.
I'm just saying that's the reason why you said what's the kind of pressure was on the quarterback. But Heinicke struggled a little bit in that game, quite a bit, because those two picks that he turned over the ball, they ended up turning into scores for Buffalo. And then they had another turnover by Logan. But I look at his play overall, when he was under pressure and the line broke down, he struggled even more. So he made some bad throws with those two picks. And then once it's almost like he was forcing things with the offensive line being, struggling a little bit also. And like you said, Tony, they ran the ball better as far as the run protection, but the pass protection was not great. And you're going to have some growing pains with Heinicke anyway. But the picks, that's what he was in the past as far as under pressure throwing the picks. Will he get better? Possibly, but they've got a tougher schedule along the way. And that's the reason why I almost gave him a D, because 2 scores were scored after that. But he did some good things. Well, after the pick, Tony, he came back and got the touchdown after with the special teams play. But overall, his play has to be better. So I gave him a C-. Along with the offensive line, Tony, I gave them a C- too, because their pass protection was not that good. Their run protection a little bit better, but they have to play better in protecting Heinicke too, being a young quarterback.
But if you gave the line a C- or a C and you gave him a C, why did you jump all
I gave him a C-.
Defense? Why you talking? Tell me how it is. They didn't get the job done. Let's be true.
Well, tell me, if you fall behind by 17 points in the front, then he's playing catch-up ball from the start. That's all I'm saying, Tony.
Well, why are they playing catch-up ball? Somebody come and tell me that.
Well, let's say this. Over the last year and a half, let's just say, like, this offense hasn't been scoring a lot of points. Like, every time that they do score touchdowns, it's almost like it's a struggle. It's not like it just comes along so freely. And you've been missing a lot of big plays. And, we thought with them, trying to get a veteran quarterback so they can take more shots down the field. And they said they want to take more shots down the field. but you're really not doing anything to really create those shots down the field. And when you think about it from a defensive standpoint, you got to have confidence in your offense that when you come sit down, that I'm at least get 5 or 6 minutes off that game clock before I have to go back out there. And
My man,
so those guys are looking at it from a standpoint of, when I watch the game on Sunday, I'm looking at Chase Young and Allen and those guys, and I can see the conversations that they're having, and they're looking up like, we're back on the field again, so it's kind of like these guys need a little bit of a rest in order to create a pass rush. You got to have legs in the third and the fourth quarter. But if your legs are gone in the first 2 quarters because you're on the field too much, then it's hard for us to win those one-on-one battles. And that's when you're going to have to start dialing up blitzes and trying to get the DBs involved in some of your blitz packages to get to the quarterbacks. But I just feel like this offense, you got to find out still, what's your identity? Like, you start a game off in Buffalo, you got to be able to control that offense because they are so explosive. And how you do that, you got to run the ball successful. You got to sustain drives. It's not always hit the big play in these games, but you have to stay on the field and convert those third downs. How you do that, you got to stay in shorter third down distance. And I don't think that Washington is doing that. You're seeing these 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s. And I think you've seen Heineke do some great things in his 2 starts. But this was his first road start, and he hasn't played in an environment like he played in Buffalo. Those were 2 home games. So now you got the crowd noise you got to deal with. Now the onus falls on you more as a quarterback. How resilient can you be? How can you keep your composure when you're in the enemy's territory? So this was a learning game for him, and he tried to utilize a lot of his ability outside the pocket because he was uncomfortable with everything coming at him with the rush. And that's when those turnovers happen. And when those turnovers happen, and the other team score off of them, now you look up, you're falling behind. Now you have to abort your whole offensive game plan.
Oh, now that was a nice, Donna. We got that book under your chair.
Hey, Tony, you know what? Jason was
Okay, will you read that before next week, please? Like they say on Oprah, you get a book. That was good. But now tell me, who got the running back? Because I particularly felt like on Sunday, the running backs were ready to run. That young man, he had, as I said, 31 yards and 12 carries, and then the second half, he gets no opportunity.
Well, Tony, too, I gave it, first of all, I gave him a C-. The running backs a C-. We had the one
all
big
of
play.
them. You give Milt, you gave them
well,
all.
I say all of them because we didn't see a whole lot of them because we were watching Heineke too much, trying to be successful downfield. And to Donna's point, we fell behind, and I could see that one coming. When we weren't consistent in running that ball in the first quarter, and by the second quarter, we were already down by 14, 17 points, I believe. It pretty much, you have to dismiss that running game, and just enough to keep them honest. But the other part about it, I don't understand with the running backs. I said early in the season, I thought Coach Rivera brought running backs in here who specialized in catching the ball out of play action, out of the backfield. And I just haven't seen the usage of that talent in that way. The one time we did see it, it went for 78 yards. And so I think we have, I mean, you can't do it every play, but we have more opportunities. And McKissick is the same way. He can take the ball the distance too off of short passes or dump off. So I'd like to see more of that. I think this offensive scheme and the talent that we have on this team, I think the scheme either has to get more creative or aggressive and use the talent that we have on this team, or we're going to be seeing this the entire season. And I hope not. I hope not.
You know, I'm sorry, I kind of jumped ahead because, you know, we got Mr. Washington International in here now, and he's on the Hall of Fame. And after I talked to his people, he told them he had to be number 2 as on interview. Mr. Clark, I'm real sorry. I'm real sorry. Tell me about it. And to me, we got one receiver we can count on. I saw, now they talking about, I'm not going to call names. Then I see this young man that they're raving over, and he dropped 2 balls that would have been first downs. And I see somebody else. I see this tight end, and Mike is going to be saying is all world. I see him do good things and bad things. Now, he made a great run, but then he gave the ball back to him. G, tell me about these wide receivers. Is it that we don't have to go to, and is that part of Heineke's problem as well?
Well, we definitely have a go-to receiver in Terry. Like Terry's a great go-to receiver, you know, but sometimes, you know, they'll go to W or they go to triple U or they go to shut you down. Unfortunately, what always happens to the passing game is having a good running game. And unfortunately, I know you said, you know, 31 yards, but he averaging 2.5 yards a carry, 3 downs, that gets you 7.5 yards. So you're not going to get a first down running. So at the end of the day, that's probably why they let it go. They probably went to the pass to let that go because they have been successful throwing the ball the last 2 weeks. I mean, previous for that game, they've been very successful throwing the football. So I grade these guys out of the C. They can do a lot better. And quite honestly, even though, you know, Terry's going to get considerable amount of pressure right now, people are going to be looking at him right now, you still have to be that guy that just continually gets open. The same thing with all your players. If you're a superstar on that team, your job is to always rise to the top no matter what. That's why you're a superstar. And if you're average, you know, if you're just your normal professional football player, then you're going to do average things. But if you're not average, you're going to go over and beyond. But sometimes you do have one of those games that were off, you know, and unfortunately for the receivers, it was an off game. For the offense all the way around, it was just an off game. Heinicke, I tell you what I like about the guys. He doesn't give up. He makes a mistake. He doesn't give up. He comes right back at you. He tries to come right back at you. He did some good things running around. Like he's quite honestly, he's running for his life almost constantly right now. So
right.
Just being there too. So I'm seeing why he's probably getting a little anxious, probably getting a little happy feet, letting that ball go a little sooner than it should, because he's like, I want to stay in the pocket. I want to throw the football, but I'm going to get crushed if I do. But I'm supposed to stay, you know. But I think he really just has to start listening to himself. At the end of the day, as a player on that team, you have to listen to what you know to be true. And at some point in time, I listen to my coaches, but then I'll block them out. Come game time, they're blocked out. I'm not listening to them anymore. I've already prepared myself for that game, and I'm putting my game plan into play. So, I mean, come back next week. That's all we can do. I mean,
we've looked at each facet of the team, and
we got spanked.
Right, and we've looked at each facet of the team and found them flaws. But the tight ends, Mike, as you said, was pretty good. We only got about a minute and a half. Give me a real quick thought of you and the tight end.
The best tight end in the league.
Yeah. Thank you. I knew you were going to bring that up. Boy, you got a memory, Gary. Let me tell you, you got a memory. I won't say like an elephant because that might go too far right, but you got a good memory. All right. Yeah. I mean, if you don't get thrown to enough, there's not a whole lot you can do. Come on. Yes, he did. Logan Thomas did drop a very key fumbled a very key pass at a very key time of the game, but he did catch 4 for 42 yards. He caught all 4 other targets that he was thrown to. He had that impressive touchdown catch. One wonders why they don't go to him more on those kinds of routes. But you just can't fumble the ball in a game-altering situation. I give him a C-.
Well, you know, that was very quick. We'll take a break. But did you guys see how Mike, as well as Donna, they're going to act like, well, you can drop 4 balls as long as you catch 1 or 2 here going down. That's why they're 1 and 2. When we come back, we're going to talk about co-hosts. And if they can't do better than that, we already 0 and 3. We're in trouble. We'll be back in a moment. Well, welcome back. And if you see up there, Mike gave him a C. So, you know, sometimes you have to stop the ravings of a crazy man on your show, and what you have to do is give the people what they deserve. Tight ends didn't reserve a lot, but I think a B would be a better grade for them. And plus, Mike will be looking for another job if he don't agree with me. Now, talking about people looking for other jobs, it's a few defensive linemen. Do you know that both defensive lines in this game, all of their starters were #1 picks? They didn't play like that. And, you know, I'm starting to become concerned with this defensive line because they have the talent. I don't know if it's technique or schematically they're not putting them in the right position. But when you have 4 #1s, but their best player is hurt again, Ioannidis, who I think is their best defensive lineman. I know a lot of other people think the ring, but he's a playmaker. But these guys, and as a defensive lineman, I'll tell you, defensive linemen can tell, and I ask you, Jason, when you have a defensive line that's putting a lot of pressure on you, they can change the whole floor of the game, can they not?
Yeah, defensive line can change the floor of the game. One thing, it helps your secondary. You know, you're not able to hold the ball that long, and you have to get rid of the ball, which creates turnovers. You know, then your DBs can jump certain routes and not have to, sit back in coverage sometimes. But when your D line is not getting pressure, like as an offense, you can do anything to neutralize them. And I feel like teams are running the ball at will, and that's the number one thing you can't do is give up the run. You have to make a team one dimensional. That's what Washington did really good last year was they stopped the run. They forced other teams to have to throw the ball, and that's when Chase Young and Montez Sweat and those guys was able to win those one-on-one battles and get to the quarterbacks, and that's how you create turnovers. And right now, I just feel like they're not stopping the run, and they're not getting the opportunity to win one-on-one battles. It's like you said, because they're not creating pressure together. Like you got to create pressure together, and two of those dogs up front, and Payne and Allen got to be able to draw double teams sometimes so that you can single up, because your outside guys, they're going to get chipped sometimes. And Chase Young can say, yeah, I'm going to get chipped on the way out. And sometimes he's going up the field, but he's got to learn different moves as well to bring to the table to make those guys have to study and prepare for something different. You can't come with the same move every week.
Right.
Hey, Milton, when the show's over, clean your office out. We're going to have Jason in there next week. Let me tell you this. It ain't just the linebackers. I mean, you see them making tackles downfield and they jumping up, pumping chests and stuff. When am I going to see a linebacker stuff somebody at the line of scrimmage? When am I going to see a linebacker dominate a game and put some fear in that tight end coming across the middle? When am I going to see a defensive back he's so close to covering, not just holding, but he's doing it that well? I haven't seen that in none of that. Now let's start with the linebackers. They say we have improved it. We even draft one high. What is going on with these linebackers?
Tony, I got one question to ask. And you said what we haven't seen, and I agree. We're depending on our front four to bring pressure. This is game 3. We haven't seen that level of pressure yet. Is there anything wrong? Like Jason said, is there anything wrong with dialing up some blitzes? I mean, I saw nothing in Josh's eyes that he was afraid of what we were doing, even when we brought or were getting to him. And that pocket did collapse a few times because Allen owned his man. He was winning the battle up front with his man, but there was little or no other help anywhere else. But Allen still pushed he pushed the game to him. And I don't know why we are not bringing additional pressure. That might be the scheme. I don't know.
Well, you know what? First of all, I want to ask you, when did he become Josh to you? I was looking at Josh. I mean, dude, I don't know the guy. I'm looking at Josh.
Relatively speaking, relatively speaking.
You got big on this show, but wait a minute. You know what?
Hey, this is my last week, Tony. You told me I was out, so I got to get it.
We'll give you another try. Wait, I asked Jason after the show when he wanted to come back. Doc ain't here. He messed around and said the wrong thing. Doc ain't here. We got him on suspension.
Oh my.
You know, you take a look at it, and we got to see more domination, but you saying why is there not much blitzing? But I said earlier, schematically may be something wrong because all the units, the linebackers, the line, and the defensive backs haven't worked well together. And so now I got to start thinking about what are you doing to help them? One thing you did say is true. They need to do more games for you fans. That's when the linemen are changing positions up front. Mm-hmm. They need to blitz more linebackers, even safeties. I remember we've had Darrell Green blitzing. Right. They don't have enough excitement or different degrees of things to me to make people, as you said, Josh, try to think.
Absolutely. I mean, if I'm a defensive back and I know I'm not getting the pressure that, typically we need to get, then I'm going to study those routes that the receivers are running. And then I'm going to know when I need to sit down on some routes, because right now they're just going right down the field. If I'm running a 12-yard out and I know they run route, I mean, I'm going to give you 14 yards and I know you're running a 12-yard out. I'm going to sit on that 12-yard out. I'm going to be right there at 12 and I'm going to jump on it. Right. I mean, understanding what they're doing visually on film. I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead. But understanding visually doing film is big.
Good point.
I just had one question, and I was listening to some of the analysts taking a look at these two lines. Buffalo, of course, they have all first rounders on their defensive line, just like Washington does. I thought that was a pretty astounding thing. But Tony, they were saying that Jerron Payne was the one that was being doubled consistently on Sunday, and that Sweat had one-on-one, Young had one-on-one, and even Allen had one-on-one, and they weren't beating their men, that Payne was the one causing the problems. Is that true?
Well, first of all, let me go and digress and change that one thing. You called us a bunch of analysts. They haven't seen our picks lately, have they? They say we just a bunch of people out here trying to get it right.
We shouldn't even be asking each other, right?
That's why none of us gamble.
Well, right. I heard the analyst say, like, he don't know our name. We didn't analyze nothing right yet.
No, I'm talking
Eric,
about
what's your score for
the big guns.
One and something.
Go ahead, Mike.
That's all we need to know is 1 and something.
Do you want to know about the secondary and how they played? There were a couple of very interesting things about the secondary, and I spent hours poring over this, but well, at least an hour. But anyway, I'm going to give the secondary a C-, and I'm just going to say, look at the stat sheet. The Bills' plan was to go right after Benjamin St-Juste and Kendall Fuller, and they did just that. I mean, if you look at St-Juste, he had 5 solo tackles, Fuller had 7. They had 13 solo tackles. That's half of all the tackles the secondary had. Everyone else in the secondary, they had 13. But in and of itself, 26 solo tackles in the secondary screams to me a lack of pressure on the quarterback. I mean, at least in my mind. St-Juste was covering on 2 of Josh Allen's 4 touchdowns. The first was on him. The second, he thought he had safety help. Now, Curl tried to come over and make up some ground, but when the quarterback is throwing lasers, it's pretty tough to do. But, it just, for me, the secondary, they're not playing together. And it still, to me, looks like it's preseason. The two biggest receivers for Buffalo, Emmanuel Sanders had 94 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he fed off of St-Juste. Cole Beasley and Donna, somebody talked about him last week, said got to cover him. He had 98 yards and he dined on Fuller. So they went after those two, and those 2 receivers pretty much had their way with them. So I'm going to give in to Donna's pressure from last week, and I'm going to go ahead and put Bobby McCain at the slot corner this week against Atlanta, and I'm going to ask Kendall Fuller to please sit down this week.
Okay,
wow, Donna said that.
Let me digress and go back. I gave the defensive line a C, and that's only because I want to get paid off. So because if I really said what it was, they'd probably take me off the air. Number 2, if you think about it, we still are saying in so many different ways that they're not playing as a team, and we're saying that on both sides of the ball. Let's ask a quarterback that's been out in that fire and everything. When you see this defense and you heard everything about them, I've never seen in a game lately so many guys, as they catch the ball, is no defensive player around them. They got clean catches, got time to run and everything. Isn't something, when you look at it, it's some flaw in that scheme.
Yeah, most definitely. Like, you got to think about it, like Gary was saying, these guys got to study tape. Like, they're not sitting on anything. To me, it's almost like they just don't want to get beat deep. And they just giving up the 10 to 12-yard catches and the crossing routes where guys are catching the ball on the move and at full steam and able to make a open field miss. So you got to, 1, you got to move up some. And then 2, you got to study film. No tendencies. When guys get in certain, like as an offense, it's only so much you're going to change up during the season. You'll change your formations and different things like that. But for the main part, you still going to run those same plays. It's just going to look different to a defense because the formation changed. But if you study film, if you know he's in a tight alignment, then you have to know there's some type of out cut that's probably coming. If he's in the outside alignment, outside the numbers, then there's some type of in cut coming, or there's a stop route. And so you have to know tendencies and just study those tendencies. And then you have to talk to your safety. If I'm a corner, I'm going to talk to my safety and say, hey, on this route, I'm jumping this underneath. Have my back on over top, because they may be in a 2x2 or they may be in a 3x1. So if you use single receiver side, if you're not in some type of 3 deep or you want to play cover 6 or something, if you to the single receiver side, which is typically the best receiver on a team's offense, then if you're the corner, you can take more gambles because you got the help over top. So from a scheme standpoint, I think they can do a little bit more, but I also think it all just you got to include these guys in blitz. You can't line up every time and give the offense the same look. Like teams are too good, coaches are too good, and quarterbacks nowadays are already RPOs and stuff. You making life easy on it. You got to throw some blitzes that like Cleveland did to Chicago yesterday.
Oh, well, I tell you what, and that was a great explanation. We're gonna have to take a break now, but just let me clear up one bit of business. Donna, when he said 3 in the back, he wasn't talking about 3-point shot. He was talking about 3 deep at the back. We'll be back in a moment. That was my moment of teaching a young lady something about football, not basketball. Well, we're glad you came back because sometimes I don't feel like coming back. But when we talking about these Washington teams, I'm all giddy about it last year. So what we're talking about this year is one part of the team. Each and every year, we try to bring out like we know everything we're talking about. There's 3 parts of the team. You got defense and you got offense. And you got special teams. The only reason we talk about special teams last few years because Donna's cousin is on there and she's been fighting for his job. And now that she found out she's about to lose her job, she was getting ready to throw him under the bus. But Donna,
never
to go to Milt first. But you know what? I hate to say this. Your boys are doing okay. And Milt, you got the special team. That's the one facet of the team to me that's been consistent, making plays and improving each and every week.
Tony, good word you use, consistent. And we can say to this point, the special teams are not really figuring in or factoring in and costing us any games really. As a matter of fact, Donna's cousin and my main man, Dustin.
Oh, now you wait a minute. Josh was your friend.
No, because
you and somebody else, one of the owners is friend. Now your main man. Wait, what's going on?
No,
so
because you tried to run Dustin out of town, so don't even try to be on his back.
You know what? There's not a bus you haven't thrown him under.
Well, the bus is dragging.
Milton, Tony, I texted Milton yesterday on Sunday. And I told him in the second quarter when they did that unbelievable special teams play and Dustin Hopkins, I told him he kicked the ball, then he landed on it and recovered it to set up the touchdown. So I told Milton, I said, "What are you saying now?"
And for that, I gave special teams a B-. I thought it was a brilliant play on his part. People won't know if they go back and look at the tape real clear. Somebody pushed him on the ball. I don't think he was trying to actually recover it. I think he bumped into somebody. He bumped into somebody, and there the ball went.
Show it where it was.
But that's. But nonetheless,
also now under the bus again, right?
I digress. No, I will say it was a great play at a good moment in the game. It was a great turning point for us. But again, that was special teams pluses. Look at Tressway. He's still consistent. I think he had maybe 4 or 5 punts, about 255 yards. So he's got a good average on his punts. I got nothing bad to say about the special teams. We just need some other folks on some other teams to kind of help them out a little bit. So I made, in fact, I texted Donna back and said, I am making Dustin Hopkins the MVP of this game. And then I text later on and say, no, of the NFC East. And then I texted back and said, of the NFL. He is that guy. He is that guy.
No wonder y'all so bad. Y'all
excuse me. There was a 66-yard field goal this Sunday. That is a special teams play.
Yeah, that's A+ level stuff. That's A+ level.
But you know what? I and it's been other A+. G, we finally see some return men here. Every time they touch the ball, G, they look like they can take it to length. Is that true? Are we just seeing an aberration or what? Notice I used the word aberration.
I'm on Webster right now. I'm all over.
Right.
Until they take it to the house, they're no big yet. But
that's how they measure.
To the house, then we can have that conversation. But that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, but we're getting to see something. Just think the last time we seen threats, you were playing.
Well,
now you on the wall of fame. Does that tell you something? You don't want to.
Right now, you know when you're starving, Tony, like you're starving, you're hungry, you're really hungry.
Everything
Yeah,
looked good.
you eat a grape and the grape tastes like the best steak you ever had in your life. I think that may be what we're seeing right now.
A 7-yard return.
You know,
Yeah.
we're just craving for something right now. So if we see some type of opening, some type of shining light, then, you know, it's progress. So yeah, I agree, it's progress. So I just want to see more
so
progress.
you doing like we say in Battle Creek, Michigan. Is that all you got?
I mean,
It's
yeah,
not
the
too many
thing.
lights that's shining bright right
It's just
now.
hard for me. It's just hard for me right now to be positive about that game in any type of way. I mean, they
Yeah.
almost scored a nickel on us. Come on now.
Yeah, I agree.
Only 50 Cent. I want to hear 50 Cent, the singer. I don't want to hear anything else. They gonna score 50
Hey,
on
come
you?
on, break out each other. Yeah, come on, break
But
out
tell me,
Jesus
like,
did.
Oh,
Tell me
like
what
Gary-
you didn't like about it. What can change?
Like
I
Gary
mean,
said, it's so many breakdowns on this team from the offensive side of the ball to the defensive side of the ball. Like I think, like Jason said, they've got to be able to score more points because when you look at that brutal schedule that's coming up, they're going to have to score more than 21 points, and they can't be turning over the ball. I hate to say this about the defense again, Tony, because this was supposed to be the elite defense. This was supposed to be the strength of the team. They look like they have digressed on defense more so than improving. The last part of last year, the defense started to play better. But right now, they're looking like they're totally lost out there. And Coach Rivera talked about measuring this game moving forward. Well, that measuring stick didn't go far with that game in Buffalo. It told them a lot about this game.
Sure.
So when you look at them moving forward, even he talked about the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator, that they've got to get better as far as maybe changing up what they're calling on both sides. Because right now, this is a ship that's sinking fast after 3 weeks. And if they don't get it together, they're going to have some bigger problems moving forward.
We got 55,000 more games.
You know, you can't come out flat for that game. You're at 1-1. You're coming off a big win, a huge win for yourself. You know, if you go in and you beat Buffalo, it's changing. It's life-changing for that season.
Yeah.
Automatically, if they don't beat Buffalo, we come into this week, we got a swagger about us like, what? We're going to kick your butt.
Yeah.
Now, you're right now, you got beat so bad, now you're doubting yourself all over again. Like
Does that default to prep?
3 steps back.
And I'm not going off on the coaching staff, but the last 2 weeks, even the opening game, I didn't see a team that looked like it was ready to come out firing. I've not seen that in 3 weeks. Still haven't seen it. And I don't know if that, I think that might be a preparations thing. I know these are professional players. They draw paychecks. It's on you to make it happen. I'm spoiled. I came up under Coach Gibbs' regime, and so I've seen what it's supposed to look like because there's results in that. But I just don't see that preparation where you're going to come out. Like Gary said, you know you got to come out and stand tall against Buffalo. Even if you lose, you still got to stand tall. And I don't think we stood tall. In that
Well, that's the thing about offense.
Could you wait?
Not the
Hold a
coaches,
minute.
though.
Yes, Coach, that was the Homer talking like that. I'm sorry.
But you
I
have
don't
to
know.
put that on
We
the player.
changed.
That's
We changed.
the player.
Homer is talking bad. I'll see can I change him the rest of the show. Sorry about that.
The thing about offense too is like in NFL, like they script your first 15 plays. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
typically offense is going to score within those first 2 drives at some point because you know exactly what you're supposed to do against every look. And I just feel like from an offense standpoint, you got to be more creative. You look at, you know, some of these other
Yes.
teams, even their star receivers, like with McLaurin, they can put him on more crossing routes. They can put him on more sit down. He don't have to line up on the outside so much. They can run some misdirections type stuff and get some reverses and just to make the defense have to go east and west sometime and not just worry about, you know, we playing control passes. Like, you know, take some shots. You know, you think about the Heineke throw that he made in the end zone against the Giants in the back of the end zone. I think the play was done. He just threw the ball up and gave the guy a chance. You know, that's what you're going to start dialing up a little bit more. Is just have some deep posts to take the safeties out of there, but then put McLaurin on a deep over route. And then that way the safety's cleared out of there. He's behind the backers and you play action pass because you have the threat of the run. Then you can hit some of these receivers in these deep end cuts, those 14, 16-yard curls and digs and everything and skinny posts. But you can't do that if you can't block that long, you feel like, or 2, if you can't feel like you have no rhythm on offense. Like they got to find their rhythm. Right now, I just feel like they're just running plays.
Yeah, good point,
Oh,
Jason.
yeah.
We brought Brown in to take the top off. Well, the top must be 10 yards because I haven't seen him in a route beyond about 10, 12 yards.
Yeah,
So-
but he'd have dropped them, so we
And
don't.
those-
know the
yeah,
team,
he
but
dropped
he'd have
those,
dropped two at all.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I know players. I mean, coaches don't play the games. I know schemes don't play the games. It's on the players to manifest it or make it happen. But I just don't see that connection. And somebody said earlier too, all facets of the game are not playing together. It looks like they're playing in parallel lanes instead of as one team.
And can I ask about Matty Ice? Because Tony, you have the inside look. You read the newspapers in Atlanta. You know this quarterback. You did uniform inspections at all those Atlanta games. You know this quarterback. Now they got the best tight end in football. What are you going to see?
Did we trade the Washington trade our tight
Wait a
end?
minute, you did that change?
The best one in the draft. The best one in the
In the draft.
draft.
Okay.
Tony,
You gotta come correct.
what are you going to see with Matty Ice? What are we going to see
Well,
with
you know
him?
what I see with Matty Ice, and I say this before we take this commercial cover. When we come back, we're gonna talk about all the teams and the changing of the guard, how you see many young players now that's making the big plays in many young teams. But when you talk about Matty Ice, you go back to Brooke Benton, and a lot of y'all don't know about it. And what they say is a rainy night in Georgia. Be back in a moment.
Well, it's that time for you're right and I'm wrong. And the question for the panel today is, after 3 weeks, which rookie quarterback has struggled the most? You've got Zach Wilson at the Jets, David Mills in for Tyrod Taylor in Houston, Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, Justin Fields in Chicago, and Matt Jones in New England. Milton, you're on the clock right now.
I think it's short and sweet for me. It's got to be Justin Fields. And I think what decided it for me was just seeing how lost he looked in this most recent game. And so that would be my vote.
Tony, you're on the clock.
I'm kind of with Milt, but at the same time, none of them had really had enough time for me to
That
draw
much
an
to choose.
opinion. So, but I just always go with him because they haven't won anything. So I'll say that right now. But at the same time, you take a look at it, Chicago's quarterback did not do that well on Sunday himself. And I think what they did is figuring him out. But no body of work, not enough to really try to say who has done bad or good.
And one thing about it is that the rookie quarterbacks are all struggling right now. Mike, you're on the clock.
Yeah, I mean, Donna, I have to go with Justin Fields. I mean, that poor guy didn't know he was going to be going in, and he thought he's going to be backing up Andy Dalton. Chicago scored 6 points. Not only that, he hurt his hand. He says he's going to be okay in the second half. I mean, that was really tough for Justin. But I really think he's got the biggest upside of all the rookie quarterbacks. I really do.
Well, Mike, he had 1 yard passing, but it wasn't all his fault, and that's the lowest in the NFL. Gary, you're on the clock.
You know what? I really don't know, and I really don't care.
Okay, so he's finished already. Jason, you're on the
That's
clock.
not how this segment goes, Gary.
Hey, I'm gonna go with Zach Wilson, just because he's been very turnover prone. He threw 4 picks the week before, and then this week he threw 2 interceptions this week, and hasn't thrown touchdowns or anything. So right now, I think he's pressing a little bit. Like I said, I can understand you saying Justin Fields. I just feel like Zach's had more an opportunity at this point right now. He's been very turnover prone.
And I'll say, to close it out, Trevor Lawrence. That's our segment right now for You're Right and I'm Wrong. And Tony, now Jason and you are in the room for In a Minute. And we're talking still about quarterbacks right now. And so the question for you and Jason, Tony, is among the NFL starting quarterbacks, who surprised you most? You've got Sam Donovan, Derek Carr, Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, and Justin Herbert.
None of those really surprised me. How good he is, Mahomes, and how he could do so many things is amazing. But at the same time, you go to Baltimore, and they have a quarterback that can do different things with the same amount of success that Mahomes. And then you look at other ones that haven't had a lot, but they're doing okay. So really, it goes back to, as we said, with the young quarterback, it's the body of work they have to present right now for us to see where they are. And right now, I'm not really enthused with any of them, but I think the biggest change is going to be not because of the different quarterback or a disappointment is I think the Rams now have put themselves as number 1 and number 2 in the NFC because of the trade they made with Detroit.
Well, right now, Tony, the number 1 quarterback is Sam Darnold in Carolina and Derek Carr for the Raiders. Those are the top 2 quarterbacks. Jason, you talk to me about those 5 quarterbacks I mentioned, because those are leading the pack right now, and especially those first 2.
Well, Sam Darnold just goes to show you a lot of Sam Darnold and Stafford shows you a lot about what coaching can do and what an environment and a change can do. Like, you just a product of the system. And Stafford, when he was in Detroit, he threw for a lot of yards, but he wasn't getting a lot of help. He was always throwing from behind. And now you look at him out with the Rams and what he's doing with there. Like, everyone's kind of shocked, but I'm not shocked. I like, this guy's been throwing the football. He's just not playing from behind, and he's playing with a coach that knows how to dial him up at the right time. Then you look at Sam Darnold. Always had a great arm, and he was with the Jets. Let's face it, Jets hadn't been good in years. And all of a sudden, he goes to Carolina. They team him up with Joe Brady, who had Joe Burrow at LSU as offense coordinator. Now he's the OC at the Carolina Panthers, and now he's changed Sam Darnold's whole perception of playing quarterback, where he's playing looking like a different guy. Because why? He has a defense that's been playing good. They held the Saints to 128 total yards. So he's not playing from behind, and he's not getting beat up all the time. So, and then you look at Derek Carr. The Raiders defense is a lot better this year than they've been. Of course, they have Waller and they have Ruggs and these guys on the outside is making plays, but Derek Carr looks like a totally different, confident quarterback. We knew he's been playing solid, but this year he's playing at another level. And you can see he's approaching that, because it's going to be in Herbert. Herbert's another guy. He doesn't surprise me, because Herbert's a big, strong guy. And they went into Kansas City and they went toe for toe, with one of the best. So, these guys doesn't really shock me, but it just goes to show you that sometimes it's not just always the quarterback. Sometimes it's where you put these guys at. You got to have continuity as a football team. And let's just face it, not all coaches in the NFL are great coaches. Some of them are not just that great. I know. And so, you just have to play the way that you play, and you get through it.
Did he say that? He said, not all coaches.
But I'm just saying, like, you get through it and understand, but you respect your coaches. But sometimes, like Gary was saying earlier, you have to know how to study film. Sometimes as a player, you listen to your coaches, but once the game time comes, you have to say, okay, I already prepared and listened to what the coach told me. Now I have to add my input onto this.
And you're very true. That was very good. And Donna, I just want to throw something else in there. We also, not just looking at the young quarterbacks, we're seeing the changing of the guard of the good quarterbacks and who's going to lead teams. And you named 5 very good ones right there. But the one thing you can say about the Raiders, the quarterback has made a difference, but they're able to win close games, and that's the difference right now. So we have to see if that continues.
But Tony, last word for you. Jason talked about quarterbacks that have moved on in other programs and ended up doing better. Teddy Bridgewater is one of those quarterbacks in Denver. Talk a little bit about that, and you've got the last word.
Well, you look at Teddy Bridgewater, and everybody look at back when he was with other teams, the Vikings and different people, and he got hurt, and everywhere he's gone, think about it, he's been pretty good. I mean, you think about it, even when he was in New Orleans or wherever, it's just something that I guess they think he's injury prone or something, or I don't know if they feel like he doesn't do everything that he can do. And maybe in the next segment, we can add Jason this, but I think he's a winning quarterback that all he's going to need is to win, but he got to stay healthy. I think that's what's in the back of people's mind. He's a very good quarterback. He's won each and every place he's gone. He's always forced his way into being a starter. So right there, I like him. I think he's going to mean a difference. And I'll be glad when the rest of the league see that he is legit. Now, when I come back, we got about 8 minutes to talk about teams and talk about picks. When you look at our picks, you know we ain't legit. As I said, there's something wrong with us. We're trying to find out. We'll be back.
What kind of player has to play for George Mason or for you?
A player of character. I have turned down players that have had tons of talent because they had less character. And I will choose character over talent every single day. And I always tell my players, character is who you are when no one's watching. So if I can't leave my purse in my locker room and walk out, then I don't have the right players on my team.
You said that when you went to Bethune-Cookman, they hadn't won, and you told them, look, we're gonna win a championship for you.
Yeah.
Can you say the same thing
Absolutely.
here at George Mason?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if people were to ask, who is Vanessa Blair Lewis, what would you say?
Oh, if the camera could turn around and Donna, you could look on the board behind you. These are the 4 questions that I asked my players last week when I meet with them. When they come meet with me, you know, initially it's like, oh my gosh, I have a meeting with the head coach, you know, and I'm new here, right? For them, 6 months in, and they're like, oh gosh, and they came and sat on the couch and they were like, go hard in the weight room and what? And I said, we're not going to talk about basketball at all, unless you want to. But I'm going to ask you 4 questions, kind of the questions I start my day with, so you can start to understand the coach that you play for, because this is the person that I want you to start to build up to be while you're here. I want you to make every layup and every free throw. Is it going to happen? Absolutely not. But you can grow into being a young girl to a young woman, and that's part of mostly our job. My first question is, what is most important to you right now? What did you get up this morning knowing, I have to do this right now? And so many of them would answer, my books, I call my mom. Okay, so you put that in perspective. The second question I asked, if you had to give your younger self advice, what would it be? If that younger girl that you grew up with so much things that you carry with you now, if that younger girl could say, hey, you know what, Donna, don't sweat the small stuff. How would that make you feel right now at 19, 20, 21? What would that advice be? And some of those were through tears, Donna, they answered. That, gosh, I wish I would have. And then the third question I said, well, if you haven't met your best self yet, and I hope that you never do, because that means you've stopped growing. But if you haven't met your best self yet, what would it look like when you meet her? What clues would there be? What is she going to look like? If you're striving to be your best self. So it gets them thinking like, you know what? My best self, I want to be an accountant at 30. I want to own okay, well, what are the clues you're leaving behind so that your 30-year-old self will ask your 20-year-old self, Donna, thank you for doing that at 20 and 21 and 22, because now at 30, we're where we want to be. Not, oh man, we broke. I ain't got a house to live in because you didn't do. And then the 4th question I asked him, I said, Donna, when you die, what do you want written on your tombstone?
Wow.
They said, Coach, what? I said, see, people think life and death are 2 different things. They are the same. You didn't ask to come here, and there's an appointment that you're not going to miss when it's time for you to go. You're not going to be late. You ain't going to flat iron your hair. You ain't got time to get your makeup on. It's going to be your time. So what we have to live in light of is that we're all going to have that time. We're all going to leave this place. How do you want to leave it? And so what I asked them, Donna, was the present, a question about the present, a question about their past, a question about their future, and then a question about their destiny. And so right now, Donna, you're asking me a question about my destiny. I told them what I want written on my tombstone would be this: all used up.
And Tony, the great thing about this too is this coming week is my second 5K walk run, and the George Mason women's basketball team will be out there with me walking next Saturday from 12 to 2 o'clock. And it's from city to city and state to state. You pick the location that you want to walk to run. And this 5K walk is from our foundation, Hopkins Breast Cancer, Inc., the helping hand in the cancer community. And we're raising money for those breast cancer survivors. So I'm looking forward to being a part of this 5K walk with the George Mason's women's basketball program. And I almost had to pull out, they almost wanted me to come back out of retirement.
Oh, come on now. You did all right till you got
You Hey, Tony.
You know.
Donna didn't hear when the coach said all used up. She didn't hear that part.
Hey, Milton, that would not be me yet.
Okay.
Speaking of you coming back, we ain't asked you to come back from the picks yet. Your picks, we might try to get fired. Mike, what's happening with these picks?
Well, remember last year when I went in the tank? Well, I got this voodoo doll.
No, you haven't paid us for it yet.
And well, I'm not the only one who owes somebody something. Come on, I wasn't the only one at the bottom. The rest of you, okay? Only one person won. All the rest of us owe them money. All right, all right. So we're going to go with our guest first. So Carolina at Dallas. Come on now, Jason. Why in the world would anybody other than Dallas win?
Dallas gonna win this game because Carolina's got McCaffrey's done. He's out.
Yep.
And that's enough for me offensively. And you think about a Dallas team that like to throw the ball around. I just think Dallas played good against the Rams out in LA. I mean, against the Chargers out in LA, and that's a tough team.
Yeah. Donna, you got to tell me now, Kirk Cousins, you're going with Kirk Cousins this week. Is it because he had a good game? We're talking Cleveland going into Minnesota. Donna, what's going on?
I still say that they played well enough. They scored points. Their defense played much better. Tony, don't be shaking your head. I'm still going with Minnesota no matter what you're saying.
That's why you're at the bottom of the list.
I'm at the top.
So Gary, you got Arizona at Rams. I know you played for Arizona. We got about 15, 20 seconds. Is it a sentimental favorite, or you just really think they can beat the Rams?
Sentimental.
Okay. I think you're also right. Okay. And Seattle at San Francisco. Milton, seriously?
Yeah. Seattle, they're gamers all the time. You don't know, but consistency, I think it's what drives me. I look at San Francisco against that when they played yesterday, and there is something about Seattle. So I'm taking Seattle because they are consistent.
And Tony, it's now you can take over with Baltimore and Denver and close us out, buddy.
You want me to close y'all with Baltimore and Denver?
Yeah, you tell me who.
Baltimore will win the game. That's all I'm going to say. And going back to you, Rev, you know that Seattle is not going to win that game. Talking about all of y'all. All of your picks is bad because you're playing with your heart.
Tony, where you at in your picks? Where you at?
When I come back next week, we'll be in control of this. But when you come back, we talked a lot about the people. But remember one thing. If you're too big to be criticized, you're too small for praise. We'll be back next week. But as we say, in a minute.